Okay, this is going to be a video about sensor integration issues and what the implications of those can be at work, in school, in adulthood and childhood and elsewhere. So I think the reason why I'm making this video is really to a little bit share my experience and how it has affected my life, as well as, what are some of the things, perhaps for other people with this to keep in mind. So I think really starting to get into this sensory integration issues, or problems dealing with sensory input, sensory data are a kind of nifty set of problems. It's something that's often, people, it can be quite frustrating, really. And I mean, what people often say is that, you can come across as dumb, or, low intelligence, or having trouble, other kinds of trouble, and being labeled very quickly, because oftentimes it's very obvious. If you're having trouble processing some kind of input, if it's something basic that people, even kind of perhaps slightly more slow-witted people don't usually have trouble with, and you have trouble with, then that's, kind of an immediate sign that something's going on. So there's an immediate risk of kind of getting labeled because of that. So for instance, if you're kind of trying to use a vending machine and you're having trouble using it because of, not kind of being able to connect what you're seeing with how it should be used, right? That's the essence of a sensory problem. Then that people are going to really notice that, and there's the risk of being labeled, and the frustration and really anxiety that can go along with that kind of labeling. So I think that's one of the initial key things that's really worrying to deal with, and can be. It certainly builds persistence, though. If you're having sensory issues, and you're going to be dealing with them day in and day out. These are the kind of core issues that they tend to happen, and one of the other themes I found, and this is coming from perspective of having worked in a kind of consulting environment where you often have to change workplaces. So the experience I've had there is that having sensory integration issues means that it's in some ways it kind of takes really a long time to get used to the environment, as well as learn, how you're supposed to do sort of normal everyday stuff, and it can really build a high amount of anxiety when going to a new place, because of those kind of basic things that you're going to struggle with, which other people seemingly have little issues doing. So, such as using vending machines, how the printer works, how to set up, other basic stuff, your computer logins and so on. This can be really kind of frustration-inducing, and it tends to be quite visible how and when you're having trouble doing those. And my experience has been certainly, over the last few years, there's no real solution to that. Kind of the sensory problems, they always stay there. The real solution is to kind of learn to accept them and learn to develop an open mind where you ask people, how to overcome them. So, really, using your curiosity towards, in a humbling way, to achieve the goals is a key thing to make towards a more successful state. So that's one of the problems, and I mean, just to outline it, But really sensory integration, sensory input-output, it doesn't end there. While that is one of the common themes, just getting used to a new environment, there's much more that goes into it. So some of the stuff that does go into it is getting, doing some of the everyday stuff that other people take for granted. So for instance, being in a noisy environment, and this is especially common in the UK, I found, and perhaps in other metropolitan areas as well, but in some of the UK offices I've worked in, because they have a kind of open setup to the office, what tends to happen is, you have a lot of noise, a lot of things happening, people moving in and out. It's difficult to really filter that out. So in some ways you're always dealing with a lot of sensory input, which there's no way around it. That does slow you down and decrease your productivity further, and it can be quite difficult, and it can be something that actually leads to further issues, exacerbation of anxiety, depression, possible psychotic outbreaks, anything like that, if you're in that kind of environment for extended periods. So yeah, it can be a challenge. So anyway, day to day, which I was starting to get into a little bit. So day to day, this can mean issues like, problems reading emails, doing other kinds of work, putting together documents, whatever, as well as technical work. Really anything which requires you to think can be quite paralyzing to do when in a noisy, stimulating environment. Because really a lot of it is that you kind of have to consciously choose what to ignore and what to not ignore, and having this sensory integration problems makes that much more difficult. So there we go. That's a key problem I found. And what has been the solution to that? Well, for me, there hasn't been a lot I have come up with to really improve this. It's kind of always been a problem area. In some ways, what I've done is kind of try to push some of the work to home. And if you're working in a kind of white collar or blue collar area where you can do some work at home, or some work off hours, kind of when the office is more quiet, then that does make a difference. It's just having that, a more quiet environment. Certainly can be quite humbling type of experience as well to get used to doing that. But I found it's necessary, because even if you don't consciously acknowledge it, having sensory integration issues can further can make it difficult enough that it's a necessary step. So you may find yourself having to just do more work than others in order to keep up with others. And it's not ideal, but it can be necessary to keep a career moving, to put it this way. So there's that. And it can be a pretty big issue. Now further kind of continuing, there is another set of things that I have been thinking of, and this is not so much more purely related to sensory input anymore, but some of the things that kind of go along with it can be a heightened verbal prowess, or a verbal intelligence as opposed to non-verbal, right? So when you're not in sensory terms quite as good as others, you may find that you do have some strengths elsewhere. So it can be quite important to start developing those to kind of make up for the problems which you do have. So what can those really be? Well, I found, in my case, that potentially, verbal ability. So kind of expressing, in written verbal terms can be, certainly a good way to add value to whatever type of work you're doing, if it's compatible at all with the type of work you're doing. So really, as a kind of tip, just keeping in mind to use or keep developing kind of verbal and written expressiveness. So, just if you're in a kind of more of a technical field, then not just doing the technical stuff, but at least volunteering to do some of the non-technical. And really, if you have, some sensory problems, that can be a big bonus. For me, at least, it took quite a while to start to realize this, that these two things kind of go together and have this, link. But more recently, I found this does seem to be the case, and this can be if you train this kind of combination of disability and ability to, in the right way, can achieve quite a bit at work. So it's in the end, a lot of it is about being open and being humble, really, because it's, having sensory issues, you're going to be dealing with problems that other people are not dealing with on a daily basis. And some people might consider it weird or strange or whatever, and there's nothing really that could realistically be done to make up for that, other than to learn to deal with it. And certainly the humbling approach seems to be the most effective one. Perhaps when combined with verbal use of and development of verbal skills, even more so. So this is some of my thoughts about sensory integration issues and how to deal with those at work. I'm going to make a second video kind of for outside the work type problems as well, and start to go through some of those. So just really stay tuned for the next bit on this. Thanks a lot for listening. Cheers.